Hi everyone, my name is Danica Kleint. I'm a product manager here at Plaid. I'm joined today by my colleague Will, our technical lead and one of the key architects behind what we're about to show you. Earlier this morning, you heard Alan talk about the future of fraud prevention and the growing need for smarter, more adaptive tools for this new world of evolving threats. I'm here to give you a closer look at what Alan introduced, Plaid Protect, our new end-to-end fraud intelligence system. I'll walk you through why we built it, what makes it different, and how it's already helping teams catch fraud earlier, act faster, and create better experiences for trusted users. And right after, Will take you through a deeper, more technical dive. So if that's in your wheelhouse, be sure to stick around. All right, let's get the slideshow going. All right, one quick reminder is that for these deep dive sessions, we will have a Q&A at the end. You're more than welcome to also type in questions into the chat. And of course, these sessions will be recorded and shared. Okay, let's start with why we built it. As we all know, fraud is getting smarter and more accessible. With the rise of AI, deepfakes, and massive data breaches, it's easier than ever for fraudsters to look real. We're no longer dealing with these isolated bad actors using stolen credit cards. We're up against organized, scaled operations using automation, synthetic identities, and insider knowledge to exploit every gap in the system. I'm sure many of you can relate. And the reality is, traditional tools aren't built for this new world. So we had to do something. All right. At Plaid, we sit in a unique position in the ecosystem, and it's this unique position that gave us the idea for Protect. As we connected millions of users and their devices to financial institutions or financial services, we started noticing patterns, subtle, hidden behaviors that pointed to fraud long before a transaction failed or an identity check triggered an alert. Take devices, for example. We can see a device linked to 5 newly opened accounts, all with the same behavior, appearing across different platforms over the course of a week. To an individual company, that's just one user. But to Plaid, from our view, it's part of a larger fraud pattern that is clearly a coordinated fraud ring. This is network level intelligence, and it's something no single business can see on its own. So we asked ourselves, what if we could take all of this data, those fraud signals across 1 billion devices, but also cross-network activity patterns, deep risk indicators within our linked bank accounts, and layer in a consortium feedback loop, all with the goal to give our customers a real, actionable advantage against fraud. And that's exactly what we've done. Plaid Protect brings together first-of-its-kind fraud data, and it's built for this new world. So what is Plaid Protect? At its core, Protect is 2 things. It's first, the Trust Index, a cutting-edge fraud model we call TI1, built on rich network-wide data. It delivers a dynamic trust score throughout the user journey, helping you apply the right friction at the right time while improving conversion. And secondly, it's an investigative toolkit, a best-in-class toolkit designed specifically for fraud teams. You can go from learning about a fraud ring to deploying mitigating rules in seconds, no handoffs, no delays. Let's start with the Trust Index. All right, it's an adaptive risk engine trained on as many as 10,000 attributes across 1 billion interactions. But more importantly, it's powered by fraud signals you really can't get anywhere else. Signals like network intelligence, device behavior patterns across 7,000 plus apps on how devices, accounts, and identities move across the ecosystem. And bank account insights, changes to account tenure, email or phone mismatches, and suspicious behavior in linked accounts. Also, beacon consortium data, shared fraud signals reported across the industry, so if another Plaid customer reports an account takeover, you can see that risk in real time. And identity verification data, signals like PII mismatches, deep fake attempts, and emulator use, all feeding into your Trust Index in Plaid Protect. Together, these give you a much deeper picture of user risk, even before the user signs up. And that's one of Protect's most powerful differentiators, early detection. Most fraud tools wait until the user types in their name. Protect starts scoring risk the moment a device begins your sign-up flow. That means you can route known, low-risk users down a faster path, or reserve friction like ID document verification or selfie checks for higher-risk users. Ultimately, you're improving conversion and reducing fraud at the same time. This helps you shape the customer experience based on trust from that very first step of the sign-up process. All right, now let's talk about the toolkit. We designed Protect's interface for actual fraud teams, not just pretty dashboards for show. The heart of that is Explore. It's your control center for investigation and pattern detection. Think of it like a search engine for fraud. You can ask natural language questions like, Show me a user who linked 3+ accounts and used a phone number in less than 30 days old. No SQL, no waiting on data pools. It's fast, intuitive, and built to help you investigate minutes, not hours. No one has that time, right? And once you've spotted a pattern, here, let's change this slide here. You don't need to switch tools or hand it off to another team. With Protect Rule Builder, you can instantly turn that search into a live fraud rule in the same interface. Truly. No codes, no delays, nothing lost in translation going from one team to another. It's detection, investigation, and action all in one system. And we're already seeing meaningful results when customers use this type of early detection and targeted friction. In a retro analysis with a large fintech, we found that 40% of first-party fraud could have been prevented by stepping up just 5% of users. That's a small intervention with massive impact. And for a major crypto exchange, that number was even higher. 47% of suspicious users could have been flagged simply by stepping up 10% of traffic at key moments. These aren't trade-offs between fraud and conversion like we've historically had to do. They're proof that smart, precise fraud signals let you protect your platform without slowing down low-risk users. Now that you've seen just the core of Protect, both the intelligence engine, TI1, and the toolkit, we'll take a deeper dive into how it all works. Will's up next to talk through the technical side of Protect and highlight what's possible with these new capabilities. Before I pass over the mic, I won't sleep tonight if I don't reemphasize. Protect isn't just a new tool. It's a new way of thinking about fraud prevention. It gives you access to data fraudsters can't fake. It lets you act on risk before the user even completes sign-up, and it puts everything you need into one workspace. Whether you're stopping ATOs, synthetic identities, or first-party fraud, Protect helps you do it faster, earlier, and with more confidence. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Will.
Thanks so much, Danica. You've already heard a ton about the new Plaid Protect features and the Trust Index today. So I'd like to spend some time diving into a bit more detail on how you can integrate and take advantage of all this new functionality. So first, what does it take to integrate Plaid Protect? Nothing, which is awesome. If you're an existing customer of Link, Layer, Identity Verification, then no code changes are required at all to have Protect work for you. Dashboard will give you access to all your customer events. Through our Plaid systems, you can explore that traffic, view Trust Index scores, save searches to create rules, and configure your workflows without any code changes required. I'd like to show you a bit more detail about what integration looks like on a dashboard beyond what you've already seen today. So Alan mentioned earlier that you can create complex search queries across all of your customer traffic and save those searches as rules. So let's take a minute to understand what that flow looks like and why you might want to create rules. Here, we've honed down a search to a slice of suspicious activity. Creating a new rule from this search is as simple as clicking the Save as Rule button. Doing so will ask you to assign that rule to a specific rule group. Rule groups are a powerful way to cluster a set of specific rules for your traffic and then use that set of rules to customize Plaid workflows. So let's look at a simple example. You can now see I've saved that rule from before that we just made to a rule group called Highly Sus. I'd like to ensure that any users going through my identity verification flow who trigger that rule get rejected. So to do so, I'll head over to the new Configure tab. Here, we see a new and improved interface for customizing my identity verification workflow. All the same customizations you've used before are available here, but in a more streamlined and clear user interface. In the Risk Engine module, I'll simply reference my rule group and indicate that any user triggering it should be automatically rejected. And that's it. This is a very basic example. We'll be adding more and more ways to leverage these saved rules to configure different conditions and step-ups within your Plaid workflows. But all that said, there are ways to make code changes to take advantage of Protect and receive extra fraud signals. So I kind of want to walk through 4 different things right now. First, we've launched a new product type that you can pass into Link. It's named Protect Linked Banked. When you create a Link token, you can add this either to your required product list or your required if supported product list. Doing so will signal to Plaid to extract some additional bank insights, like identity information, that we can leverage in our models to get more fraud signals on a particular user. No other steps are needed. Any bank that supports our identity product supports Protect Link Bank. A bit later, you'll see how to leverage that extra data when the Link session finishes. Second, I'm particularly excited about this one. We're launching a brand new Protect SDK today. This SDK is intended for use in your front end and web and mobile apps. It allows you to send us events that happen during your own application flows, and more importantly, allows you to receive trust index scores as soon as someone starts onboarding onto your app, because we can check that device signature within our own network. Let's take a look at what this looks like. I'll show you a web example, but it will also be available for iOS and Android. So first, you load our small script on our page. The API key for the Protect SDK you need for this is available on the dashboard along with all your other Plaid API keys. Next, you initialize the SDK itself. I'm showing two options here, sort of simple, easy mode and advanced mode. This creates a Protect SDK session identifier, which you can use in your own logging, or, as we'll see later, with some of our new backend Plaid APIs. Lastly, you can identify the current user and track new events. Events you send here will be visible in dashboard, and the event IDs can be used to fetch trust index scores via the backend API. You'll notice this looks very much like a traditional analytics SDK, and that was very intentional on our part. We wanted it to be lightweight and meaningful to your specific context and application flows. Finally, I'd like to show you some API highlights you can use to integrate more deeply with other parts of Plaid Protect. First, sending your own events. As you saw earlier today, the Protect SDK, dashboard contains all the events within our Plaid network, and the Protect SDK will allow you to send front-end events. Those front-end events help capture important device signals and moments during your own application lifecycle. However, higher sensitivity events like the user adding a multi-factor authentication or a transfer being initiated should be sent from your backend. Hence, we have this new Protect Event Send API. Here's an example usage of it. Two things I want to highlight. If the event happens while the user is present on your front-end app, you can include the front-end session ID we saw earlier that we got from the Protect SDK. And that allows us to better connect these backend events within our graph and can give you good device and connection scoring information. And the second thing to highlight is that optionally, you can request a synchronous trust score index back from the event that you send. This feature can be used to get back a trust index score immediately if you need to use it for your own application decisioning. Sometimes you want a score, but you might not be in the context of a specific event. For this, we've added Protect User Insights Get. This endpoint will let you query by the user ID to get the latest event and a score for that particular user, along with additional Protect-related metadata. When a user has gone through a link session, you might want access to that final trust index score that we computed for them at the end of the link session. And to make that easy, in addition to the User Insights Get API you just saw, we've included Plaid Protect results into link token get. So after a link session completes, you can call this endpoint to get trust index scores from that particular session. That's what I referenced earlier when discussing passing Protect Link Bank as an additional product. Finally, sometimes events happen within our systems and the user's not present or not in your application at the time. For example, perhaps the name on their bank account changed and we noticed it. In those cases, Plaid Protect can notify you via webhook that a user event has happened. And in these cases, we'll send a Protect user event webhook with event information. Here's an example of what that webhook payload looks like. If you want a score from that event, you can then call Protect Event Get to retrieve full details of the event along with the trust index score of that event. So in recapping, leveraging Plaid Protect today doesn't require any coding. Your existing integrations with Plaid just work, and you can use Dashboard to explore events, look at your traffic, create rules, update your workflows. And then second, you can get additional signals with the Protect SDK or by adding Protect Link Bank to your link product list. And then third, we have a wide variety of backend APIs that you can use to send events into our system, retrieve scores, and be notified of asynchronous changes for your users. Be sure to check out our API docs for more details on everything I've shared here today. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining and taking the time to dive into this with us today. We're really excited for you all to use this. I, in particular, can't wait. Danica and I have some time now for questions, so please feel free to submit them if you haven't already, and we'll get through as many as we can, starting now. So I'm just reading off the list of submitted questions here. The first one I see is, when is this available for me and how do I get access? Well, we're opening up the beta today, so it is available for beta customers today, which is awesome. We'll be rolling out additional beta customers over the coming weeks. If the beta is full, Protect will be generally available this fall for everybody. We are encouraging you to sign up for the beta. The URL is plaid.com/product/protect if you want to do that. Yes, so please sign up. What is the criteria for the beta? Danny, I'll hop that one to you.
Sure, yeah. So for the beta, one thing that we're asking is that you are an existing Plaid customer today using either one of our identity verification products or one of our account linking products. And then it's also really helpful if our beta customers have existing fraud labels, just so that we can compare and measure impactful improvements that Protect makes for you as we're really kind of honing our models and everything during this beta period. So those are kind of the two main requirements. I also see another question here that I can just take here, Will. One kind of just general question is, what makes Protect different from other fraud tools? And I think there's a lot of angles I could go out there. I feel like there's a lot of things that makes it different, but I think at the heart of it is really the data. We're pulling data from data sources that traditional fraud prevention tools just don't do today. And it's data that fraudsters aren't aware of, so they can't figure out a way to bypass it, and they can't fake. So it's that truly like bank level data that really differentiates Protect and makes it kind of a one-of-a-kind unique solution today.
Awesome. I've got another question here. How does level 3 data play into this? Will you be trying to integrate this more? Yeah, definitely. We're already hard at work on our next model release, TI2. So stay tuned for more updates on that front. How is risk scored without additional user inputs? I think this means like without you as a customer having to provide information or the user having to enter anything. Essentially, you saw in the Protect SDK, when someone's landing and starting onboarding on your site or your mobile app, we're able to connect that device signal and that current session to previous sessions within our network and bank accounts we've seen before based on that device and other connection metadata being used. Whole variety of things. And so we have real-time insights additionally, like IP velocity powered by our Plaid network. So there's sort of a lot of signal you can get just by someone not even just landing on your page and sending your first event with the Protect SDK. And so that allows us to give you some sense of trust without any additional work on the user's point of view. Let's see, how is it going to be different from the suite of KYC fraud products? Danny, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So it's different in that, again, it's bringing another set of data to the fraud suite. What it's going to do is kind of work as a platform that you can use on top of all of our other additional fraud products. So you can use Protect to maybe trigger whether you want to use certain components of our identity verification or use certain components of other fraud products. It's kind of a way to like determine the risk and then use it as a step up to whatever the next kind of action will be for that user, whether it's a high trust user or maybe a low trust user, and kind of triage. So it works really well kind of systematically with all of our other suites, and it kind of is just that kind of baseline foundational platform to use there.
Danny, we got one that's for ID verification. Where do you get ground truth data?
See, I'm looking through all of these things here. Where do you get ground truth data? I'm trying to understand exactly what ground truth data actually means. But I guess identity verification, that's more of our IDV product. So we do use our identity verification product, whether that's database verification across our, authoritative data sources there, or document verification or selfie verification. We use that as like kind of the ground truth there. Let me look here and see if there's any other.
Yeah, I just add, we have like a whole variety of different data sources that we like aggregate together to get to assemble that. I think is the best I could say. Let's see, what adverse reason can be used for fraud denial based on bank insights when credit was not pulled? Yeah, I think I'll say like clarifying on this one, Protect is not used to deny access, but rather like the primary focus is to calibrate how you do step-up verifications and induce additional friction only when you need, and to gather additional information for risky sessions. So the decisioning of what to do with like is up to you as a customer, right? You get to set your rules, you get to set your step ups and configure your flows based on the data we're providing to you and the signal that we provide to you. Hopefully that answers that question. How is it different from Plaid Signal? Is there any value for us to use Plaid Protect if we already use Signal to score our ACH transactions? Danny, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, totally. So there's absolutely value in using both. There's a lot of nuances here to kind of explain it, but I think at a high level, the TLDR is that it works. Signal, is focused. It has been trained over many years of being trained on ACH returns, while Protect is the models are being trained on focusing on stolen, synthetic, and first-party models. So they're really kind of two different models trained for different types of fraud.
Cool. There's another question here. Does this product require users to authenticate via Plaid, IDV, or link, or can it function passively as a simple data call? That's an awesome question. So no, you could use our Protect SDK and get Signal independent of whether you're using IDV or link integrations. But that said, the more information our model has about the user, which we gain through things like link, account linking, and identity verification, the better quality fraud signal we'll be able to provide you. So I think the quick answer is no, it is not a requirement or a prerequisite, but your data quality and our sort of like confidence in the fraud signal we're providing is higher if they are going through link or going through identity verification. Related question, for the beta version, do I need to integrate with the new SDK? No, not at all. Like, as I said earlier, the core integration requires no code changes. When you're on the beta, you can go look at your events, you can configure workflows, you can create rules, all without any code changes. And Protect is pretty modular overall. Like, you can kind of like piecemeal pick up parts that help your specific flows. So maybe that is using the Protect SDK to get a little signal earlier in your onboarding flow. Maybe it's getting some signal after a link session. I know one of our early customers using this is doing just that, is they want some better signal right after an account has been linked so that they can set some kind of configuration for that particular user. So you can use it where it's best. Maybe you really want to care about asynchronous sort of updates and identity changes, and that's the sort of thing that's important to your use case. All those are available. And so, yeah, there's no sort of like requirement on how you integrate with any of this. Can Protect be used for business clients? Danny, do you have a good answer for that one?
Yeah, so for the beta, it's not open for B2B clients today, but we are excited to find ways to like specifically support that type of use case when it's more generally available.
Awesome. I'm not seeing too many. This is good. I really appreciate everybody. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody adding questions and engaging. It's really helpful. I'm not seeing any new ones yet. We'll give it a moment here to see if anyone has any last minute questions. It's got to be something to stump us with. Okay, one just came in. So I see overall trust index and device risk in our Lightning product. How is Protect different than Lightning? Danny, I might defer to you on that one.
Yeah, sure. So for context here, our identity verification product, IDV today, does have a component of trust index. That was kind of our very first model for this. And it has some kind of device risk elements in there as well. But this new model within Plaid Protect is kind of an evolution of this. It's taken in a lot more signals. So you kind of just think of it more of like that version, but on steroids with a lot more data that's feeding into it. And also kind of the Plaid network component is added into that as well.
Okay, I'll take one last one. I think we got time. Yeah, we got time for one last one. So this one, can I use Protect before consumers gone through IDV, link, CRA, et cetera? Yeah, absolutely. I sort of covered this before, but as I said, it's pretty modular. You can use the Protect SDK, but the more information we have about any particular user, the better the model is going to perform. And so if they go through link and IDV, it's better. But as we said, we have network data, we have signal, even just from the customer kind of starting your onboarding flow. Awesome. Thank you all so much for the questions. I really appreciate it. Please go check out our docs, go sign up for the beta. We're really excited to see what you do with everything. And thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, Danny, for answering all the hard questions for me.
No, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.